Good afternoon.
मतलब ये है कि अब क्या आपको डिसाइड करना पड़ेगा ना, क्या कैसे क्या सही रहेगा, क्या आपके लिए सही है, यहाँ काम करना है।
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's session on the e-invoice hosted by Gst Zen. And this session is all about how e-invoicing is going to change the way we do our business. And what we are going to cover is the basics of e-invoice and a little bit about how the e-invoice works, either through API integration, Excel integrations. These are the things we are going to cover. And just to give you a little brief about myself, I'm a practicing chartered accountant. I've been in practice since last 20 years. I've been part of drafting of the e-invoice schema too, and I specialize in the domain of indirect taxes and technology. A little bit about GST Zen. GST Zen is an application service provider who is in the business of filing returns. And when we say returns, predominantly GSTR 1 and 3B, which are periodically filed, and annual return 9 and 9C. But what is most important or highly used, the tools of GST Zen are reconciliation reports. Most of the users of GST Zen love using the application because these reports are Excel driven reports, and these reports, as a financial professionals, we understand Excel very well. The reports have multi reconciliations, 2A versus 2B versus books, and one at the PAN level or at an individual level. And also there are situations where you want to automate some of the business processes. So those businesses process automations are there using the other tools. So there are a lot of other features that are there which will simplify your business processes or the way you handle your GST compliances. Just to give you the users, there are around 30,000 users, and you would find all sorts of the users. You will find a listed company and to a brick and mortar store, right? And there are users who use different accounting application, be it Tally, SAP, Oracle, proprietary software, or someone use the GST Zen own billing applications. Coming on to today's topic, e-invoicing. If I have to give a little basics as to why e-invoicing, in fact, the India, we are progressing towards a digital economy, and what was there an year back to now, there's a huge change. Today, you would find even a street vendor who is selling a pani puri would accept some of his receipts through Google Pay, Phone Pay, or whatever the modes of the digital currency payment. Now, that being the case, there are a lot of the activities which are done at a business level, even that needs to be automated. One of it is reporting of the invoices. The objective of it is simplifying the compliance, bringing transparency. Every time the e-invoice was implemented, the level of collections, the tax collections have gone substantially higher. You might be wondering that, okay, if I am using a software, is my current software is not what it is it doing the e-invoice or not? So there's a difference between e-invoice or an electronic invoice, whatever the word which we say. The invoice that is printed from your computer is actually not the e-invoice. E-invoice, there is a standard, there is a schema which has been defined. Prior to the introduction of e-invoice in India, is there any schema? Answer is no. There hasn't been any schema. So e-invoice is the first structured, defined schema for a document. What does that mean? It only means that all these acts, whether it is a legal metrology act or MRP related acts or weights and measurement act or income tax GST, all these acts were prescribing what shall be the contents on the invoice. But the first time the GSTN brought this concept of electronic invoice where the digital format of the document of the invoices was given. And the purpose of it is to bring an interoperability between various players. It could be supplier, recipient, e-waybill, e-commerce, the return filing, everyone. And the another interesting objective is to make the interoperability between softwares. Today, a vendor issuing an invoice which is generated from SAP Oracle system, and you are maintaining the books of accounts as tally, you do not have a mechanism to post the accounting entries. But now, with the new system, the interoperability is there. And the e-invoice is also bringing other players into the ecosystem like bankers who are giving invoice-based financing, discounting, all those options are being given. Yeah. So this is how the e-invoice comes into play, and this is how the e-invoice is going to benefit it. Today, when I say interoperability in India, India has multiple softwares. Multiple indicates like really multiple. The data which is stored in each software is like another. Like what you are seeing is different type of sockets. Today you have say iPhone, the iPhone charger doesn't fit to a C pin. Like that, there are multiple, each software has each type of pin plugs. This is being eliminated by the introduction of e-invoice, and that is what we are aiming at. The journey so far, if we have to see, the journey has been, it started with a fear as to what it will be, and will it is going to become costly, will businesses adopt? That was the question when it started first. And it started with the entities with more than 500 crores and above. There was a teething time, so they had given a 30-day relaxation. Implementation from 1st September derailed and went to 1st October. In terms of the statistics, if you see the number of the players who are in high value bucket, if I have to put it on a histogram, the number of players who are into more than 500 crores would be this bucket as compared to number of players who are more than 100 crores or others. But when they generate an e-invoice, the quantum of the data which is generated by these users is this big curve, while the data generated by other users are this curve. So when the first phase, the testing, they have implemented the e-invoice for this category of customers, and system did not fail, did not fall flat. It handled well. Very soon they rolled up to more than 100 crores, more than 50 crores. Like if you see the between the draft schema to go live, it was almost 2 years. But when it was going live, only due owing to the pandemic, there was delay, but we have jumped. Currently, we are giving e-invoice solutions and applications because the compliance mandate more than 10 crore and above, e-invoice is required. And this 10 crore, it means aggregate turnover. Where are the legal provisions? These are the notifications which have been issued for raising e-invoice. Central tax notification number 61, 88, 5/21, 1/22. Recently, Finance Ministry and the Secretary have made a statement that we should go live with SSS more than 10 crores also, more than 5 crores also. So that is what which is going to be happening. As of now, the SSS more than 20 crores are live doing e-invoice. This is the current threshold. The current threshold people who is doing e-invoice is more than 20 crores. Now, who are the people who have to do is the aggregate turnover. There is a little myth or confusion about the aggregate turnover. The aggregate turnover, when we say the 20 crores, the aggregate turnover for the 20 crores definition, the way we have to look at is all India turnover. This is not GST based turnover. This is not GSTZen based turnover, but this is PAN based turnover. Second, this turnover is not for the previous year. It is like for any of the previous financial years. If the turnover has exceeded for any of these previous financial years, you have to do the e-invoice. The questions the people ask is, I did not do, my supplier did not do. Is there something wrong going to happen? Do I need to take care of any other non-compliances? What would be the penalty? All these questions would come up. I would invite participants to put your questions in your chat. There is a Q&A section. I will take up all your questions. But to begin with, please understand the turnover when we are talking PAN based turnover, and it would also include exempt, taxable, non-taxable, all the turnover put together. The definition of aggregate turnover, 2 subsection 6 of the Act talks about aggregate turnover, which is all the turnover which is applicable, which is being conducted for the business person. There is confusion that people always say that 20 crores, 10 crores means taxable turnover. An educational institution, a university, whose predominant revenue is from either grants or the tuition fees from the students. Education is in an exempted sector. So let's say they have a turnover of 50 crores. However, they generate revenue from renting their auditoriums or some scrap sales, everything. Let's say they have collected 1 crore. Now, one common myth, because I have 1 crore taxable turnover, this is well beyond the threshold limit of 20 crores. So there is no requirement of the e-invoice. Friends, please understand, when we say 20 crores, the 20 crores has to be read as the turnover means exempted turnover and taxable turnover. It is exempted turnover and taxable turnover. This is something one has to be really mindful of. Otherwise, we will err, and when there is an error, it is going to be costly. In GST, the non-compliance is very costly. It is better you comply the provisions. All right. Now, there are other relevant notification one has to be aware of. First, 68/2019, which has given the origin to e-invoice and which clearly states if e-invoice is applicable to you, you are not doing e-invoice. If you are not complying with the e-invoice, the document which you are issuing is not valid. The document you are issuing under section 31 is not valid. If this is not a valid document from the buyer side, section 16 subsection 2, which requires a document for them to claim a credit, even their input tax credit is at risk. So they are going to make an issue. So better you comply the law. It is evidently clear that wherever e-invoice is applicable, you have to issue. Where can you generate an e-invoice? The generation of e-invoice has been given multiple. There are 10 portals notified. As of now, portal number 1, which is e-invoice1.gst.gov.in, which is managed and run by NIC. This is the first portal which is generating the e-invoice. I believe there are 5 more licenses which have been allotted, confirmed. They would be going live soon. So generation of e-invoice has to happen from these portals. They have notified these portals. These are the portals from where you will have to generate e-invoice. So this is also another thing one has to be careful of. One has to be mindful of that e-invoice has to be from these portals only. And what is the form and content? Like how you have seen GSTR 1 or 3B filing, there is a JSON structure. We call it as schema in the technical words. The schema has been defined under notification 60/2020. There are certain category of people. There are certain category of people who have been exempted from generating invoice. So their business is exempted. These are anyhow have been earlier covered under notification, the rule 54. They have already been exempted. So by virtue of notification 61, the extension for issuing an invoice is extended to from the tax invoice to e-invoice also. Who are they? NBFCs, banking company, passenger transportation, goods transportation, and admission to cinematographic films. Please note, an addition to that is SEZ. If you are an SEZ, the invoice is not applicable. This exemption is qua business and not qua PAN. So if you are in under your PAN, you have multiple businesses. One of the businesses being this. So only for that business vertical, you have an exemption. This slide is very important. I would urge the participants to pay attention. If you are clear with this slide, kind of you understand the provisions of e-invoice, many of the doubts would get clarified. What you are seeing in the green color are valid documents where e-invoice is applicable. What you are seeing in the red or orange color, e-invoice is not applicable. Now, let's understand these one by one. The first and foremost, e-invoice has to be read as an e-document because it is applicable to a credit note, it is applicable to a debit note along with the invoice. It is applicable to all the three of it. So it is not just an invoice, it is a document. Both the invoice, credit note, debit note are all applicable. Second, if an invoice is issued to a B2B, e-invoice is applicable. If the invoice is issued to B2C, e-invoice is not applicable. That means the supply transactions between B2B, e-invoice is applicable. Between B2C, it is not applicable. Next, e-invoice is applicable only for tax invoice. If you are issuing a bill of supply would be issued for an exempted supply. If you are doing an exempted supply and issuing an e-invoice, so e-invoice is not applicable for an exempted supply. Let's look at what does it mean. I am making an exempt supply to a B2B. I am making an exempt supply to a B2B, or which is equivalent to a taxable supply to B2C. For an invoice to be applicable, it has to satisfy both. It has to satisfy both. It has to be an invoice. It has to be at B2B. If an invoice is issued to an unregistered person, or if I'm making an exempted supply, which is bill of supply I have issued, I'm issuing the document to a registered person. In both the scenarios, e-invoice is not applicable. For e-invoice to be applicable, it has to be an invoice and issued to a B2B person. And the definition of B2B would also include business to the government. If a government is having TDS registration number, even then the e-invoice is applicable to that government. Next comes the exports. This is a specified category. They have specifically mentioned for exports, e-invoice is applicable. Yeah. So let's look at any questions that have. So someone was mentioning my voice is not audible. Hope the voice is audible. Perfect. All right. So let's get into the operational aspects of it. Registration. Government has given 3 portals for the application developers, programmers. There is a sandbox. You can make a trial if you are into a trial. There is a trial, and what is colored is the live portal. That is what one has to be using for generating e-invoices. They have also given a lot of utilities. You go to e-invoice portal. Who are the people who are generating e-invoice? Whether e-invoice enabled for you or not? All those other tools have already been given on the portal. Let's understand the process of generating e-invoice. The way system works is you as a seller, you upload to the registrar, which is NIC IRP portal, and it does a validation and generates an e-invoice and sends you back a digital information. In fact, I have a digital way of an animated way of explaining. As a supplier, you do an e-invoice, push it to GST system, which is registrar 1, 2, 3, and this registrar will connect to the GSTN portal, generate an e-waybill e-invoice. It will also publish to the GSTR1, which means it is live available to the recipient in GSTR2A. It also have a facility to connect to the bankers for banking and other activities. The transaction posting can be happening automatically to the books of accounts through an API. So the e-invoicing system is more robust and more sophisticated. There are certain terms and definitions one should be understanding about e-invoice. First and foremost is IRN. IRN is an invoice reference number, a unique number which is mandatory for e-invoice. So it's a 64-digit alphanumeric number. So it has to be present before issuing an invoice. Don't worry about the content. It will be automatically generated. Next is the IRP, who is the key person who is generating an invoice for you. You as a taxpayer, you have an interface with the IRP, but in the IRP backend does lot of work. He maintains a registry so that there is no duplication. He connects to e-waybill portal and generate the e-waybill portal. He uploads the data back to GSTR1. All does he do which is not visible to us. You send the data, he digitally signs and sends the document back to us. So basically, what is the change that happened? Earlier, you are issuing the invoice to the customer. Instead of issuing to the customer, now you are giving it to the government, getting an acknowledgement back, and then giving it to the customer. Does it take away a lot of time? Answer is no. This process definitely doesn't take time. The response comes back in milliseconds, nanoseconds, which is in a blink of eye. However, he is just a registrar who is acknowledging. He is not going to store the information. So if you want to cancel the invoice, you got to cancel within 24 hours. Else, the document has to be edited on the GSTN portal itself. If you look at a response, the response would look something like this. The response would look, which is more technical. You don't need to be worried, but it will give you high-level information about the business. And on the NIC portal, you can generate the invoice, print it, and issue. This would be with a QR code. Now let's understand what is this QR code. QR code is digitally signed by NIC, which contains high-level parameters of an invoice, which can be used to know authenticity, whether this has been coming from a genuine source or not. When you scan this QR code by the NIC, you will be seeing a high-level business information: who is buyer, who is seller, what is the document date, number, type. All those things would be visible. At GSTZen, what do? We help the customers in generating e-invoice. I will be showing a live demo using how generating e-invoice using Tally ERP9. Likewise, there are other solutions using Excel, billing software, and others. So what I will do is I will be taking some of the questions, then we will get on to the demo. Before taking questions from the participants, there are questions, certain things which I have listed. Firstly, data is always, systems are always garbage in, garbage out. If you're sending a wrong data goes to GSTR1 or the invoice. Your system has a bug. Instead of issuing an invoice to Vatsa and you are issuing the invoice to Veno by mistake, the portal will not be able to understand it is going to do it. Can I make a correction after doing? No amendments, nothing can be done. Can I do cancellation? Within 24 hours. After 24 hours, no cancellation. Generated the invoice, I forgot to add some 100 rupees, can I do it? Once generated, no amendments. Within 24 hours, no amendments, no amendments, no amendments. When should I issue the e-invoice? As usual, whenever in the earlier scenario when you are issuing the invoice, the same time you will be doing invoice. There is no change in the issue of invoice. Section 12 read with section 12 and 13, those provisos still hold good. The time of supply will hold good. Next, will e-waybill continue or will it go off? E-waybill is governed under Rule 138, e-invoice is under Rule 48. So both are different provisions, both will continue. You will still have to generate the invoice along with the IRN. You can generate it later, as and when the goods are getting moved, you can generate the e-waybill at a later point in time. Do I have to print the invoice? When we say print the invoice, it is print with a QR code. IRN is optional, but QR code is important. A relaxation has been provided. If the QR code is there, digitally, you can show this during the transit. You don't need to print the invoice. You can have a digital display of the QR code. Will the invoice be sent to the recipient automatically? The answer is no. You will have to send. IRP, you are sending the information, he is putting an acknowledgement and giving it back to you. To your customers, you will have to send the invoice. Government is intending to build a system to send the invoice directly to the recipient, but not live at this point. I have already prepared the invoice. Should I save any additional information? I would recommend yes, you have to, because the proper officer who is inspecting your premises, either under section 70, 67 or 65, may ask you a question saying that, are you complying with the provisions of the e-invoice? You have to print the invoice, establish, yes, there is an IRN to this document and I am complying with e-invoice procedures. Until what time I can register the invoice? There is no timeline as of now. Even the backdated invoices can be generated. In fact, during the demo, I will show you one backdated, recommended at the earliest. Can it be cancelled? Yes, but within a 24 hours of creation. Can it be modified? Never, it can be modified. And if I have to generate an invoice because the earlier invoice was mistake and I forgot to cancel, what do I do? Okay, you cancel it in your books of accounts. Do not report in your GST returns. So in GSTR1, manually you have to make the amendments. On the GSTZen portal, you have the validators which will tell you what should be the HSN, what should be the PIN code, if the recipient GST is cancelled, what are the things you have to do, etc. All the information is available. Let's get into some technical aspects. We call it a schema. So the way the GSTZen portal is designed is it understands how its interaction should be happen to the government portal. So the data which you are presenting from your ERP accounting software on Excel, it will be translated into a language in which the government understands. After it is translated to government understanding format, it fetches the details of IRN, digital signature, QR code, everything. It has an ability to save it into the ERP. It also has an ability to send it to the customers. So you don't need to do an emailing services. Once you are doing e-invoice, you can ensure the GSTZen can take care of emailing a PDF and along with the digital signature, if you need one, that can be done. There are little bit details that are there on the schema, which is more technical. I would like to take couple of the points. The e-invoice is divided into sections. Now this slide sounds very technical. All that I will say is look at your physical invoice. Your physical invoice also have sections. That is what the schema also has been defined. What you are seeing is some in red color, some in blue color. The red color means it is mandatory. Blue color or gray, black color, they are optional. So you can have multiple contents in the invoice. If the mandatory contents are there, the invoice gets generated. So totally 133 fields are there, of which there are 28 mandatory sections. So if you fill that much information, that is sufficient. You will be able to generate e-invoice. These e-invoice have fields which are like mandatory, optional. So while doing a data entry, I will show you what are mandatory, what are optional. We'll be seeing those information. Now, what does the GSTZen help you? How does GSTZen can help you in generating e-invoice? GSTZen has an ability to connect to the government database using Excel or an ODBC or a push button directly in your applications. All these methods of generating e-invoice is possible. That is what we are now going to see demo in a while. And the connectors are supported for, there is a direct ERP connector, there is a database integration models, various models are available. Looking at your software, you can get in touch as to how this happens. I will pause here for a moment and I will have my colleague Bharti to show how the Excel connector and the billing software would work. And I would invite another colleague, Srivatsa, to show how the API connector would work. Bharti, Vatsa, over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Srivatsa from Gst Zen, and I will be showing a demo of how e-invoices can be generated through Gst Zen through three different methods. And those methods are your Excel-based integration, your API-based integration, and also directly from Gst Zen's billing software, where you can enter the invoice data, and when you click the generate e-invoice button, an e-invoice will get generated. So I will start sharing my screen. I hope my screen is visible to everyone. So as you can see, this is Gst Zen's dashboard, where you see a list of GST numbers. You can add a new GST number by clicking this button here. You should be able to input the GST number. It will automatically show you the name and you can add the GST number. So we list out all the GST numbers that you have added to your account. What is the taxpayer name? And we also show if you have filed the last two returns for your GSTR 1, 3P and 9. And in order to do e-invoicing for any GST number, you have to click on that GST number and it will take you to the detailed page of that GST number, where we show you something called as your recent actions. So you can download reports, reconcile your data, file GST returns in Gst Zen. And here we show you some of your recent actions so that it enables you to reach those pages much quicker. And in order to do e-invoicing, on the right hand side, you will see there is an option called e-invoicing. When you click on that, these are the methods of methods through which you can generate an e-invoice. You see that there is a Tally SAP integration. You can directly upload a JSON and generate an e-invoice, which is particularly helpful for software developers. And there are two main options, which are the Gst Zen Excel full on the second row towards the left, and your Excel on the first row towards the right. So first I will be talking about Gst Zen Excel full. Now here it is a standard template which you can download, fill in the data and upload it back to Gst Zen. It's got a fixed set of columns. So I will download this Excel and I will show you what the columns are. So as you can see in this Excel sheet, there are three sheets, namely about, sales invoices, and master data. The about and master data sheets are purely for reference. The sales invoices sheet is the important sheet where you will be entering the invoice information. And you can see that some of the columns are in bold while others aren't. The columns in bold signify that they are mandatory and you have to enter a value if at all an e-invoice needs to be generated for this invoice. The ones that are not in bold are optional. You can either enter it or you can leave it blank. You will see that they are color coded. What this means is all the fields belonging to a single section of the invoice schema are coded in a single color. You can see the document details, the supplier details. Then we move on to the recipient details. Ship to details and dispatch details are mandatory. And finally, we have the item level details, which are, ship to details and dispatch details are optional. And finally, we move on to the item level details, which is mandatory and you can enter. In fact, I have a file with some data that has been entered. I will quickly open that file. And I will be uploading this file and show you how e-invoices can be generated in bulk through Excel. So you can see that I have some data here. There are 9 invoices in this Excel file, and I'm going to upload this file into GSTZen. So I select the file and say upload your Excel. So the moment I do it, we'll be redirected. So I think the Excel is not visible. Let me share the Excel as well. Okay, sorry for that technical issue. I believe my Excel is visible now. So now I will just reiterate what I said. This is the Excel that has 3 sheets: about, sales invoices, and master data. Okay, the about and master data sheets are completely for reference. You do not have to input any data into these sheets. Only in the sales invoices sheet, you have to enter your invoice data. And you will see some columns are in one color, some columns are in the other color. What this means is all the fields belonging to a single section are coded in a single color. The document details are here. Then you have the supplier details. After that, you will see the recipient details, ship to and dispatch, which are mandatory, like I mentioned before. And finally, we have the item level details. So like I said, the columns that are in bold are mandatory, and that is why we have entered values for those columns. The optional columns can be left empty. So this sheet has 9 invoices, and I'm going to upload this into GSTZen. I have to click this square box that says upload the file. You can either select it or drag and drop a file. And I select the file and hit upload your Excel. And it will immediately show me a summary of the number of documents. So in all, there are 9 documents, out of which it shows 8 here. That is because there is an error for one invoice. How we show errors in GSTZen is we tell you what the invoice number is and what the error is. So then you can go back to the Excel file, correct the error and re-upload again. But since I have 8 valid documents here, I'm going to be uploading these documents. We also provide a summary of the taxable amount and the taxes. It is the sum of taxes for all the invoices in the Excel, so that you can compute and see if it is tallying what you have given to us and what we have computed here. And finally, we also provide the date range between which these invoices exists. So this is the first tab here. The second tab will tell you what the errors are, and third tab is a different kind of summary where you will see the invoice number, the customer name, and so on. And as you can see from this legend, yellow color means the e-invoice has not yet been created. It has only been uploaded to GSTZen. It has not been uploaded to the government portal yet. And I would like to open the PDF and show you that it is a regular tax invoice. This does not contain an IRN and a QR code, which we will only be getting after uploading these invoices to the government portal. So in order to do that, I click on this blue button and say yes, upload e-invoices. Please look towards the top left of your screen. You will get messages saying IRN has been generated for these invoice numbers, and slowly you will see that the yellow color changes to green, which means e-invoice has been generated. And now nearly all the invoices have turned green, and if I open the PDF now, you will be able to let me just close this. So I believe you can see the PDF now. It has the IRN and the QR code along with the acknowledgement details. So now this has become an e-invoice, and this is how you can generate e-invoices in bulk in GSTZen. Now we will be moving on to the billing software, where you can directly enter the invoice inside GSTZen and create an e-invoice. In order to do that, you have to click on sales register in the GSTN detail page. The sales register basically is a list of all your sales invoices. It will list out all your invoices. You can apply a bunch of filters to narrow down your search. Some of these filters include searching by invoice number, searching by a recipient, searching by the invoice type. Let's say you want only B2C invoices, you can apply that filter. So we have a wide variety of filters that you can apply to narrow your search. And now what I'll be doing is, in order to create a new invoice, you have to click on this button that says new B2B sales invoice. And of course, as the recipient is mandatory, you have to select the recipient. I will be selecting this recipient and say webinar 5 or webinar 10, and I have to select the invoice date. I'm selecting it as today's date. Here there are more options available, like GST related optional details, where you can enter the type of the invoice, the place of supply, if reverse charge is applicable, and you can also input a record date. Moving on, you can also enter your purchase order number and purchase order date if applicable for this invoice. And finally, we have some additional information here, such as payment terms, department, which is for internal filtering, e-commerce operator, transporter, consignee, and some additional notes. So all these fields can be entered and you can save the invoice. So your next step will be to add the line item information. Now I will be selecting this line item. There is a product list in GSTZen. When you add a new product to that list, it will appear here and you can select it from the drop down. I'll be creating an invoice for 3 tables and each of them cost 100 rupees, and I just say save line items. So this invoice is now saved. You can see that the total value for this invoice is 336. And like I said, if you click the PDF, an e-invoice is not yet been generated for this invoice. That is why there is no IRN. And all I have to do is click this button here that says click here to generate e-invoice. And you will see that there is an IRN. We also mentioned who has issued this invoice, whether it is testing portal or the actual portal. So this has been issued by the sandbox portal. The acknowledgement date and number is available here. So you can further also generate an e-way bill from GSTZen by just clicking the generate e-way bill button. You can enter the vehicle number and the mode of transport. And the moment you say generate e-way bill gets generated. You can see here that there is the information on the e-way bill number, date, and until when it is valid. And if you open the PDF again, you will also see the e-way bill details in the PDF along with the IRN details. So this is how you can generate e-invoice through GSTZen's billing software. Now moving on to the third part, which is the API. So this is particularly helpful for software developers. And I hope you're able to see my API screen. And as you can see, this is our API endpoint URL. There will be a body, which will be the E-Invoice JSON. I will just open the right API call. So as you can see, there is a body, which will be the E-Invoice JSON. It has to be in a certain structure as specified by the NIC portal. And your headers will basically be an auth token that you have to pass, which will be inside your GSTZen account. This is purely for authentication. And once you have this ready and you make a API call, you will see that an e-invoice gets generated, and this is the response message, which states status is 1. That means it is a successful API call. And the message says IRN generated. In the response, we provide the IRN acknowledgement details. And for this API call, we have not passed the e-waybill details. That is why it says null for the e-waybill details. And we also provide the signed QR code and signed invoice. Towards the bottom, you can see that there are two fields called signed QR code image URL and invoice PDF URL. These are nothing but the URLs of the PDFs, the URLs for the PDFs that reside in GSTZen. So I will also show you this invoice in GSTZen and what it looks like there. So the invoice number that we have generated an e-invoice for is webinar API 4. So when I go to my GSTZen account to my sales register, all I have to do is filter this invoice, and you will see that it has been generated here. This is in fact been generated right now, 3:50 p.m. And the rest of the display remains the same. The PDF will again contain the IRN and the QR code. So now through API, you can also create an e-waybill along with the e-invoice. All you have to do is pass the body along with the e-waybill details. The rest of the things remain the same. And what I mean by that is the URL remains the same, the headers remain the same. All you have to do is pass this one section towards the end called EWB details, and you will see how my response changes. It will no longer say null for e-waybill and e-waybill details. It will have values. So now I have made the API call, and in the response, like I said, you have the e-waybill number. So e-waybill has been generated with this along with the IRN, and you will also see something called as pin-to-pin calculated distance. So what this means is the government portal has calculated the distance from the supplier and the recipient pin codes that have been provided in this payload, and they are mentioning that over here. The rest of the response remains the same. We have the signed invoice, signed QR code for you to verify if this has actually been generated. And even in GSTZen, you will be able to see that this entry is available in your sales register. So I'm going to follow a similar process, copy the invoice number, go to my sales register and just filter it here. And you can see that it has been generated. It will have the e-waybill details, of course, like I said. And here also we mentioned the pin-to-pin calculated distance. And let's say you want to cancel an e-invoice directly in GSTZen. All you have to do is click this cancel button and hit cancel, and it will be cancelled. So anytime you want to search for cancelled invoices, you can just go to your sales register, go to filter, select the e-invoice status, hit cancelled and filter your results. You will get a list of all the cancelled e-invoices. Now, when you generate e-invoices, when you generate invoices through the billing software, you don't necessarily have to click a button every single time. I'll show you how this can be done in bulk. So there's a filter called not generated. So what this means is e-invoice has not yet been generated and it is a candidate. So I have a few invoices here. All you have to do is just select how many ever invoices you want. I think the limit is 50 at this point. And you can say upload e-invoices for selected invoices. And as you can see this message, it says invoices were uploaded to the IRP portal. Please check the status after a minute. So ideally after a minute, when you check, this yellow will have turned to green and you will have the e-invoice details. In fact, I'm going to click here. And like I said, it has turned to green. IRN generated QR code will of course be present in the PDF. So that is how you can also bulk generate e-invoices through GSTZen. That brings me to the end of my demo. We also have database integrations. We have connected with databases such as Microsoft SQL Server, PostgreSQL, and Oracle DB. That is also a possibility. And there the manual intervention is nil. It is a very automated system, and it can be it fetches invoices from your database at periodic intervals, and it will generate e-invoices for those invoices. So these are the different methods of e-invoicing generation that we provide. Now we can go to the Tally integration.
Okay, thank you, Vatsa. It was a nice demo. Let me share my screen. So here we go. We have seen multi-modes of a demo. API was seen. So what I will be showing is through Tally how we will be able to generate an invoice. In fact, when you install E-Invoice connector of GSTZen, you will find the additional button called GSTZen, where it will give you details of E-Invoice. It will give you a register. You can select multiple invoices and hit the sales invoice, E-Invoice. So E-Invoice gets generated automatically. Let me show a live demo of it. Yeah. Let's go to Tally. Here is my Tally screen. On the gateway of the Tally, you can see there is GSTZen. Let me go to this. I have a B2B e-invoice register. Basically, this is your sales register. Let's change. So you'll see all the invoices in multicolors. Those which are with blue color indicates e-invoice done. Green color, e-way bill is done. Blank is a fresh invoice. Let me just do one data entry. I'm sorry I was on mute so long. No one, I didn't notice. All right. Okay, I was on mute. I didn't notice the chat, friends. Okay, let me just repeat for the sake of whatever I have done. So in GSTZen, when you add a Tally connector, you will get a new button called GSTZen. and on the B2B invoice e-register, you will see a sales register. All right. So you are seeing list of invoices. You can post a new invoice. You can post a new invoice, and it will automatically say basis the classification. It will help you to generate the e-invoice. I'm just picking some item and I'm just doing one more item. So which is normal. Here, I will, for this time, though e-waybill is applicable, I will not give the e-waybill details. So we'll just generate one invoice. Earlier, you have noticed that the configuration was not done, the taxes was not calculated. So just created one invoice, 21st July. In fact, during the demo, we have seen one invoice 25th June. So this 25th June, we have created now. You can see here in the acknowledgement number, it is showing 21st July at 3:57 we have created. So e-invoice can be generated as simple as this. Select this and click on this button, upload e-invoice. So the multiple color combinations are indicating a blue with e-invoice done, green e-invoice with e-waybill, black pending for e-invoice. So the power of technology is that just press a button, the e-invoice happens. The same with the Tally Prime. In fact, Tally itself has released in the Tally Prime an e-waybill feature, e-invoice feature. Those you are using a older version of the Tally, you can use the GST Zen connector to generate the e-invoice. Any questions? I'm very sorry, for some portion it got muted. Any questions to the participants? So this is how you will be able to see the full invoice with the reference number, IRN number, details, etc. Okay, yes, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Manjunath, you can unmute. Chaya is asking a question, can it be integrated with other accounting softwares? If your accounting software programmer, you have an IT team who can expose the APIs through API mode, it can be done. Or if there is a database which is available, a database integration through DB integration, it can be done. Both are possible. Yes,
Hi, sir.
Yes, hi.
We are from Samman Exports, Bangalore.
Yes.
Okay, we are using the Tally Prime editor.
Okay.
Okay, from the same API login we are using.
Okay.
So my doubt is, one is, can we create a backdated invoice?
Yeah, right now I have created and I've shown you. Answer is yes.
Yes, but how many days it will allow?
Right now there is no restriction.
If it is creating like that, the acknowledgement date will show the date of creation.
Today's date, correct.
Yes, the invoice date will show the backdated.
Correct.
Correct. That is valid?
As long as you are issuing it to your customer and it's a genuine transaction, in my view, it is valid.
But see, why I'm asking this is, e-invoice is created because it should be on an accurate basis and on a day basis, if I'm not wrong.
Nothing is mentioned in the law in that. It's like before issuing the document to the customer, you have to do the e-invoice. That's all. It's like you got to do e-invoice.
Okay, so for example, GSTR1 filing is 11.
Correct.
Can I create the invoice by 10th by putting the back date of 30th?
Yeah, possible. But
there is no hard and fast rule that I should not.
Correct. As of now, no. Government that is where I have said recommended do it within 48 hours. But as of now, there is no hard and fast.
Okay. Fine. I'm fine with it. The second one is, whenever we are creating an e-invoice through API logins, I mean, from Tally, it will take to API logins. From API login, it will directly go to GST portals, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
But we are facing an issue where the invoices are not fetching in the GST portals.
Yeah, so the GSTN has given an advisory. Sometimes some data is not traveling from e-invoice portal to GSTN portal. You have to do a manual punching of those invoices.
Yes,
And
we are
with
doing it.
GSTZen tool, it will also indicate which are the invoices which did not flow to the GSTR1.
No, I agree. I'm telling only because it will show, it has shown in April, but not in May and June. But is there a particular problem for that, or a software has an issue?
I have to see there it would be a case-to-case basis. You can assume 99.9% it will travel. There would be some invoices would get into an exception.
Okay. And as you are mentioning, if we can cancel the invoice within 24 hours.
Yeah.
If we have not done, then it will just directly sit in my e-invoicing portal only. So we cannot do anything.
No, e-invoice portal is just an his register, so it will not be there. It will be in your GSTR1 before you
We
file
will not take it
GSTR1.
for any calculation. But in that case, do we have to raise a credit note?
It all depends whether is the genuine invoice, you can issue a credit note. It was an erroneous invoice, you can cancel the invoice.
But cancellation will not allow after 24 hours, no?
Yeah, you can delete it on the GSTR1 directly.
But my number series will vary. If I
Yeah, that's okay. That is that likely to happen. That is why in your table 13 of GSTR1, you will give the number series.
correct a number series, I will give. But out of that, if any invoice is cancelled, then I have to show it under my cancel also.
Correct.
Then it should be either it should be cancelled or it should be given the credit note.
Perfect.
Okay. Fine, sir. That's all my queries. Thank you.
Yeah, Chaya, I got your question that Focus is giving an e-invoicing option, which is very expensive. Here are the coordinates which you are seeing on the screen, Chaya. You can get in touch with us. You can use any of the modes. In fact, our pricing is very straightforward. It is available on the website. You can use any modes of integration. Any other questions?
Good evening, sir. Sir, I belong to a HPCL family where only my loops are getting coming under GST, where the HPCL company itself is doing the invoicing part. In
Okay.
such case, is individually a dealer portal? Do we have to do anything with respect to GST is concerned?
Yeah, as
As we
long
in
as
the new
your dealer
GST.
portal, as long as the HPCL dealer portal allowing you to generate e-invoice for your sales, good. But your own only the purchases are e-invoice there. You might have oil and other activities which you supply, which is not exempted, which is taxable. You still have to do e-invoice for your supplies also. If you are making to a
We
registered person.
okay. Sir, it's like we do not have any such registered person. So, do we have
Not
to do
required.
not required, right?
Not
Okay,
required.
for petrol and diesel, as of now, we do not come under GST. So, do we have to follow any of the annual filing kind of a thing, like GST 2B or
If you
3B?
are having a GST registration, yes, you will have to undergo all those processes.
Okay, so basically, you say GST registration was not needed for us.
Yeah, so if you are dealing with fully exempted goods, Section 23 of the Acts permits you to waive off and not register for GST.
So no, I asked you this question because a company has made it like compulsory. See, whoever dealer
Yeah,
has
so again, I understand. So business complexities. So that is what I'm saying. Having registered, you have to undergo the process of monthly filing and annual filing.
monthly filing with respect to nil GST, we have to just
Correct,
mention.
correct.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Chaya, right now the Focus has option where invoice created directly goes for e-invoicing. We can work out like how you have seen in the tally, the same mode can be done. Does e-invoice required to be uploaded on daily basis or the service provider can upload all invoices on monthly basis? Yogesh, the e-invoices have to be uploaded on, I'll not even say daily basis, the time in which you generated the invoice, it has to be generated. Any questions? Can focus restrict third-party APIs? I actually have very less knowledge of this application focus. Maybe I think we can connect offline and see how to what extent the database is open. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us and knowing more about e-invoicing. Feel free to connect back to us. Here are our coordinates, and we'll get in touch with you in assisting, improving your compliance process. Thank you. Good day.
So excuse me, I just had one question, sir.
Yeah.
This is apart from the TV invoicing part. Will it be okay? Okay, sir.
Yeah. Tell me.
It is regarding the rental issues, sir. So whatever we are receiving the rental from the other person, it has a GST rate, right?
Yeah, 18%.
Hotel industry. If we are receiving a rent from a hotel industry, it'll just we have to just mention it in the our income tax accounting, right? That's all, right?
That's all.
Nothing to do with the GST, right?
No. But
Or the hotel industry, whoever is giving us.
I would still suggest, like, I am giving you a cryptic answer, but if you can, you can also write to us to the mail ID support@gstzen.in. The support team will reply to you.
Sure, sir. Sure. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.